This is a lesson about making a residential street with houses in one-point perspective. And it's actually harder than making the city streets because of the separation between the buildings and that there's two-story houses and one-story houses. So I'm going to try to simplify that for you. And so we start with a horizon line like we do in all perspective drawings, and that stands for the eye level. And usually you put the vanishing point right in the middle for one-point perspective, but it doesn't have to always be in the middle. At this point, I'm going to put it clear over here. Okay, I'm actually going to label it vanishing point, just so we remember. Eventually, this is going to get erased because in the final drawing it's not needed, but you always need the vanishing point for reference. Okay, now I'm going to start with the side of a one-story house and let that be the first one that I draw. And I'm going to have it, basically right at eye level. And so carefully draw it. In my perspective videos, I oftentimes, when I'm doing a one-point perspective house, I start with the side of the house. And okay, I'm considering this one side here, and then this is the side. Okay, so the roof would come about here. Try to center that peak and draw your line down, and then do the same on the other side from here to here. Okay, now that's your starting point. Now, when you draw your converging line back to the vanishing point, this line is also going to serve for the line that all the houses line up on, because a lot of times in residential streets, they're all like even with each other, and so we're going to draw it that way. So there is one, and then I actually have the roof line right on the horizon line, so that'll be my second converging line. And then I am going to line it up, vanishing point to the tip of the roof, and I'm going to draw the line like that, okay? And the converging lines are always light because eventually they get erased. So now to make the rest of the house, I'm going to make the cutoff line. This line that cuts off the roof has to be the same angle as this line here, like that. And this line that's vertical needs to be parallel to this line here. So we have those vertical lines there, okay? Now this is going to be how tall all the one-story buildings are in this picture. And I'm just going to make a mark to show that. Now if I had a two-story house that was like right up beside this one-story house and appeared right beside it, it would probably appear to be about that tall. And so I'm going to put that as a mark 2, that's a reference point, and I'll just write 2 to remember that. Okay. Now the next thing, I'm going to do a two-story house next, just to show you what I mean. And where it gets confusing is that we always have to make the bottom of the house parallel to the bottom of the page. And there's always a space between the houses. It's not like a city street. So I'm going to make a reference point here to start my line. And then I'm going to make the line, and it's going to be parallel to the top and bottom of the page, like that. And then I'm going to draw the converging line for the two-story house to show like how tall it's going to be. So because it's getting farther away from you, it appears to be actually that tall. That's what the purpose of having that reference point is. Otherwise it gets really confusing. So now basically what I do is I I fit that underneath this line. So the peak of the roof would come up to here, and so I would draw it there. And then I want the peak to be even, so try to make it even. Okay, it's going to get really confusing here because this is a converging line that's like in the way of that. Try not to pay attention to it. Try to make your... In fact, if you want to erase this converging line right here, you'll need it for the rest of the one-story buildings, but you don't need it for that two-story building. That's probably going to eliminate some of the confusion, as will erasing this horizon line right in the middle here. Okay, so now I'm going to make the cutoff line for the roof again. And of course, as the houses get farther away from the horizon line and they appear smaller, they also get more narrow, appear more narrow. And the line I draw here has to be parallel with that line there. Okay, so we have two houses, and there's a little bit of space between them. Some residential areas have more space than others. And the next house I'm going to draw on this street is going to be a one-story house again. And remember, the one-story converging line was this line here. That's the one-story converging line right there. So that's how tall that house is going to be. So I'm going to draw the side of the house, and these lines have to be exactly vertical, and then the line down here has to be parallel to the horizon line. That's the bottom of the house, just like this one is here. And there's a little bit more space between these two, and a lot of times there are various spaces between them. So I've already got the converging line for the top of the roof, so I'll just draw it down a little bit. And for the edge of the roof here, just draw it. And then the bottom follows the line that I drew down here for the where the houses come up to. And then we have a vertical line, and then we have a line that's like that. Okay, so there's three houses all in a row, and this is a one-story and this is a one-story, and so they appear to be getting smaller, and the two-story appears to be smaller than it would if it were up here level with this house. Okay, we'll do one more house, and we're going to make it another two-story. And here's the two-story converging line here. And so I'm going to draw my house coming up to that line, because that's how high it's going to be. And then vertical lines. And then this has to be horizontal. And don't let it fool you. They'll have to be horizontal, these bottoms in the front. Okay, the sides always have to go up to the converging line in one-point perspective. And okay, so I'll make sure that I draw the bottom of the roof to the vanishing point there, and then my cutoff line here, and my cutoff line here. And so that's all the houses I'm going to put in this picture right now. It gives you the idea of how that's done. And at this point, I'm going to erase some of the lines, and that's the reason for drawing them lightly, except for when you're actually making the building, because they confuse things if you leave a bunch of lines in there. So this one gets erased too. And you might actually need a smaller eraser to get into some of these spots. Okay. There we go. All right, so now the next thing I'm going to do is start with the front door. And in a one-story house, the front door comes, well, you know, it's closer to the roof than the front door would be on a two-story house. It's a one-story building. And then I'm going to draw the converging line for the top of the door back to the vanishing point. And I'm going to make the door, well, where it's the actual door, I'm going to draw it darker. Then I'm going to draw it really light. I'm going to draw it all the way across all the houses. Now doors, you know, they're generally a standard height, so you can use this actual converging line for the tops of all the doors, and the bottom of all the doors is this line here at the floor of the house. Now this is really simple and basic. You know, you can get, you can get more complicated, you know. So there's the door for the one-story house. Now you notice that on the two-story house it's going to come down quite a bit lower, and so we've already got the top of the door from that converging line that goes back. So what I need to do is draw the line that shows the edge of the door, make it parallel with that line, and then draw the other line. And this door is going to appear narrower than that door because it's farther away. And then I'll draw darker on the converging line to make the top of the door. All right, then we go farther down, and remember I said this was a one-story house. And so you see where the line goes across here, and the door is going to come up close to the roof line. And so I draw my line parallel to this one, and then draw the other side of the door and the top of the door like that, following that converging line. Then the only one I have left is this house down here, and this is supposed to be a two-story, and so you notice that door is quite a bit smaller. Okay, so I've done all of these doors, and I haven't had to draw any more converging lines except for that one. And I can actually, you know, if I wanted to place the door on one side or the other side, I could. I just didn't do that this time. But you can all use the same converging line to do it. Now the windows are going to be probably even with the doors. And so you can use the same converging line to make the tops of your downstairs windows. And so let's see here. I'm going to extend it down then a little bit beyond this line here. So I'll line it up here and then just lightly, you know, that'll show me like where to draw the window. And I'm going to start a window down here, and I'm going to make it, well, about that high. Okay, so this is going to be a line that's parallel to this one. Okay. Now I draw the converging line from the bottom of the window to the vanishing point, and I draw darker for however long I want the window, and then I make it really light, and I do it all the way across all the buildings. And that'll give me the bottom of the windows all the way across. Now, if I decide I want to make a window that's like a taller window, I can do that still. So I'll start and I'll do these windows and then show you. Okay, so here's a cutoff line for the window, and it's actually, oops, that didn't look right. That would have looked bad. Okay, it has to be parallel to this. It can't slope. There we go. And then I'll darken up the top here. Like that. And I can go to the window over here. Now I can make like 2 narrow windows over here instead of that large one. And I can actually do that. So I'll make a line. You see these 2 converging lines here, you know. I'll make the edge of the window parallel to the edge of the door. And then I'm going to just mark how wide I want these 2 windows. So I'm going to make this one this wide, little space between them, and the other one this wide. And I'm going to draw my lines from these marks. So this is the edge of the window, and I can darken up the converging line. And then I can go and do this one here. And this one. And then darken up the converging lines here. So I've got one narrower than the other one. Okay. And this is all just really basic. All right, now down here I can start a window too, and I can start it right on this converging line. And if I want to go lower and make a longer window, I can do that. I'll start with a smaller one here though. I mean, I'll start with one that's the same size as these. And this one is going to be right about there. And then here's the other edge of it right about there in relation to the door. I make that reference mark. Oops, that really doesn't look good, does it? All right. All right, so try to go with one line this time. There we are, it's better. And then top and bottom are the converging line. And then the same over here. Now, if I wanted to make a longer window, I could, but I don't think I'm going to do that on this house. I keep saying that and thinking about it, but I'm deciding not to. So all of these lines, all these vertical lines have to be parallel with each other. And in order to make them look like they're in proportion. All right, so there's the windows. See, they're all, you can use the same converging lines for all of the windows. Now, as you get farther down, you know, I'm going to put I've got this door a little bit more over to the side, so I'm going to make a picture window. And I'm going to make it a little bit longer than the other windows were. So here's the line for that picture window. See how it comes down below the converging line here? And then I'm going to have to draw a converging line from that, give it its own converging line, and draw it over like that. And then I finish up with a vertical line. And then the top is always even with the other one, so like that. And then I can make another window over here, and that one's just going to be standard size, so I'll use these converging lines. It's always good to make a reference mark before you want to place your lines, because it's the ruler gets in the way and it's hard to tell sometimes. Then we have the windows on one more house, and so we'll go with the lower story windows first, and I think I'll make those longer too, so we'll use the converging line from this window right there, that one. So I'll make so that's going to show the bottom of the windows. So like that. And then going to, it's harder to use the ruler the tinier you get. Okay, so those are the front windows, except for I don't have the upper story windows of the two-story house yet. So I have to decide like where I want those windows to be, and I don't need to worry about this house now for the second story windows, of course. So I'll start right here with the second story window, and I'm going to draw my vertical line, and I'm going to have it come about down to here. And I need those marks because I can't tell with my ruler sometimes how far down I'm actually making it. All right, and then I can draw converging lines. And these same converging lines will help me with all the other windows in this house here. So I'll start out with a more narrow window. Actually, what I'm going to do, I think, is this. I'm going to make a big window up here with shutters. So this is a shutter. And then try to draw a straight line without my ruler and make it parallel to this. And it's going to be a little bit narrower than the first shutter because it's farther away, or appear narrower anyway. And draw the converging lines. And then I draw the window in between. And see, I have the converging line here that I can follow. And the converging line up here that I can follow. Like that. And then I can make the shutter lines, and I can do that, you know, just all, you know, basically like this, you know, just leave my ruler on the vanishing point and just kind of creep it down. And so on. And I can go all the way down, but I'm not going to. So there we are with the second story window in that house. Okay, I've taken a break and I've erased all of the converging lines that went across this house because I want to put the second story windows in, and having those would just confuse things. So here's a little line for the edge of the second story window. And I can make it the same size as the other window if I want to, by just lining it up with that. So there's the bottom. And then going down farther, and I can make another window here within these converging lines of that window. And the farther down you get, the harder it is to draw. Now we have all of the windows and doors on the converging side, and it would probably be a good idea to erase a lot of these converging lines before we draw the windows and doors on the parallel side, because they'll make it confusing, because since they're converging lines, they slope, and when you draw the windows and doors in the parallel side, they're all going to be just parallel and they won't slope.